Thank you, and good afternoon, Rotary. I am Howard Hardesty. I am pleased to be the moderator for this afternoon's session. I'm also the chair of the Red Star Committee, along with my friend Doug Wood. And in fact, Doug Wood has been kind enough to introduce us to Kim Wood. And Kim's going to be the focus of our session this afternoon. And so let's start with an introduction to Kim. Kim, tell us about yourself.
I'm a retired educator. I live in North Muskegon, and lately I've been getting a lot of buzz because I've become a beekeeper.
A lot of buzz, okay. So tell us a little bit about beekeeping. I mean, it's an unusual hobby, or to me it seems an unusual hobby. How is it that you came to beekeeping?
Well, I love nature. I love gardening. Doug and I moved from our hobby farm in Whitehall into the city of North Muskegon, and I don't have goats or chickens or horses or geese or a huge garden anymore. And I just found I could help pollinators, and it went with my love of gardening and nature.
Okay, okay. Now, Doug did a great little video, and I want to start there, and we'll see a bit more about you and your bees. So,
okay,
Mike, let's run that.
Hello. If you've ever thought about being a beekeeper, wondered what a beekeeper does, come on in. You're going to get to be a beekeeper with me for a few minutes. Welcome to my apiary. I live in North Muskegon and my bees live right here with me. So can you have honeybees in town? Yes, you can. Come on into my secret garden. There are some strategies to having an apiary, to having bees, being a beekeeper, especially if you're in town and you want to be a good neighbor. So I have all of my entrances to my beehives facing the stockade fence, and on the other side of the stockade fence is an alley and some neighbors. So I make sure that when my bees leave their hives, they need to go up at least 6 or 7 feet, and they're well over people's heads before they start out on their foraging. Most people in North Muskegon, unless they've met me, don't even know I have honeybees right here in town. All right, this is a hive. I have a brick on top because if it's windy, we would not want the cover to come off. I'm going to give my bees a little smoke. That's what we do when we do an inspection. I'm about to take the roof off, so we want them calm. I'm going to puff a little smoke right here by the entrance. And I'm going to puff a little smoke under the lid. Then I'm going to take off the inner cover with my trusty hive tool. This is the most important tool a beekeeper can have. You're going to hear a crack maybe because they have propolis, which is like super glue for bees. And oh, there they are. I'll give them a little puff of smoke again. Almost all of the bees are girls. About 90% of the bees are girls. They're worker bees. They're the ones that leave the hive and go out and do all the hard work. Bring back the pollen and the nectar. Right now, they are busy building wax. So we keep our bees organized with frames. And you can see on this frame here, we have lots of bees. And the little brown capped cells that you see, those are capped larvae, and where you see holes, that's either where baby bees have hatched or where the queen bee has laid an egg and is about to create more bees. At the top, you'll see the white cap stuff, that's the honey. So in the center are the brood. Those are the baby bees that aren't yet born, the eggs that have been laid. And around the top, you'll see a white half circle of honey. And that is preparing to feed. So the adult bees and the newly hatched bees will eat the honey. This is newly drawn comb, and they are preparing it for the queen to lay eggs. You can see they're preparing to put honey up above. And they've also created some cells to put pollen in, which is what they feed larvae before they hatch. These two boxes are called the brood boxes. This is where the bees raise their young. This is where the queen lives. If you look at these taller hives, they've got honey boxes added to the top. I just added these a couple of days ago because our nectar flow is about to start in our area, and within a couple of weeks those boxes will be full of honey that I'll have to harvest. Everything's sticky in a beehive. They glue it together, they stick it together with wax and honey and pollen. Okay, we can see in here a lot of wet cells, and the wet cells are the nectar that the bees have just brought back and put in there. And what makes honey is when they dehydrate it, because it doesn't become honey until it has 18% or less moisture, and then they put a wax cap on it, just like a Tupperware lid. We haven't been lucky enough to see the queen today, but if you get close and look closely, you'll see some different colors in the bottom of those orange cells. Can you see it? And that's pollen that they have stored in there. They'll put a little nectar with it, and that will become bee bread, and that will feed the new larvae when they hatch from an egg. One of the trickiest things about being a beekeeper is being an honest and good beekeeper, because they're going to collect pollen and nectar, and they need to keep their colony sustained. So we don't know for several weeks whether there will be enough honey for us to harvest and for us humans to have some, because bees stay active all winter inside their hive and need their honey to keep the hive warm and the queen fed. We beekeepers don't decide to take honey until we're sure there's surplus honey. Until then, the bees come first.
A great video. You and Doug did a great job there. So a question that pops into mind as I'm watching this, I noticed that you don't have gloves. Don't you get stung a lot?
No, I rarely get stung. There are some beekeepers who choose to wear gloves, but I find that if you move slowly and gently, you're less likely to accidentally smush a bee, and the bees don't mind. You just wait for them to get out of the way. I'm stung maybe once or twice a week, and usually it's my fault.
Do you get acclimated to that?
Well, I have a little salve that I make out of plantain. I just flick the stinger out with my fingernail, and if you flick the stinger out, I feel bad because when a honeybee stings, her stinger breaks off and she dies. So I always feel sad when I get stung because I know that bee
Okay.
gave its life for its family.
Okay. So one of the other things that you had mentioned there in the video is winter. Do bees go someplace during the winter? Do they die off? What happens to bees in the winter?
That's a great question. Honeybees are the only yellow stripy buzzy things that do overwinter. They overwinter in their hive in the center. That's why they make extra honey. They cluster around the queen in a ball, and they buzz their wings, and in the middle of winter the center of that brood box will still be 90 degrees.
Really?
It's fascinating. It's sort of like March of the Penguins, you know, when the penguins all circle around. And what's interesting to me about bees is honeybees are the only ones that do that. Every other stingy thing, think of a bumblebee, think of a hornet or a wasp or a yellow jacket, they all die at the end of the summer except for a queen. A queen who has mated at the end of the summer will hide. She will burrow down in the ground, and when she comes out in the spring, she starts all over and has to build a whole new family. Honeybees are the only ones that overwinter.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. Um, so, are there, one of the things that I read in preparation for this is that, and I've seen it in the news for a number of years now, this issue of we seem to be losing population, bee population. What's behind that?
Well, we're losing all kinds of pollinators, not just honeybees, not just bumblebees. We're losing butterflies and all kinds of things that pollinate. I have three things that I attribute. One of them is monoculture. We have these giant corporation farms now. Instead of a patch of this and a patch of that, we'll have like a mile of just soybeans. So the bees can pollinate when there are soybeans to pollinate, but when they're done, there's nothing around there for miles. So this large corporate farming is one big thing.
Okay.
I think we have to have
So you,
golf course lawns. You'll see my excuse the weeds feeding the bees. Everybody thinks that we have to have a lawn that looks like a golf course, and we don't. We need much more diversity. We need a few dandelions. We need a few clover. Having a golf course lawn is very bad for pollinators.
okay. So I've also read that it's an important part of farming. And are you involved in, or are beekeepers involved in pollinating farms? You had mentioned big corporate farms.
Yes, there are beekeepers who actually transport their bees across the country on large pallets. They will go from crop to crop. They will pollinate apples. They will pollinate blueberries as they move through the country. The biggest pollinator business is in California in February when they pollinate the almond trees, and that's a multi-million-dollar business. But transporting the bees across the country, while it's a business, is very hard on the bees, and they lose a lot of bees, and a lot of bees get ill, and it's not the best for the bees. I have 4 hives right now in downtown Muskegon. I have them at the McLaughlin Groves Urban Farm for pollination for them.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of, you had mentioned business, is honeybees, uh, is that a big business?
It's a huge business, and I am now in a part-time business. I have Waggle Dance Honeybees. I'm a pollinator educator. I go to schools and libraries and museums and talk about pollinators. I even have a small portable beehive with glass windows, sort of like an ant farm that I can take to a school, and kids can actually see the bees and the queen right on the comb doing their business. It's pretty cool.
Ah, very neat. Um, One of the other things that I was curious about is swarming. Is that, do bees, why do bees swarm?
Actually in a couple more weeks of the swarm season here in West Michigan. Honeybees swarm because they're a super colony. And to give you the quick short story, if a beehive gets too full, the worker bees notice and they go, hey, there's no place for our queen to lay eggs. We need to split. So they will put the queen on a diet and lighten her up a little bit so she can fly, and then they will build what are called queen cells, which are special eggs and larvae that are fed only royal jelly. And instead of being that little capped brown cell you saw, it'll be like a peanut. And just before one of those new queen cells will hatch, half of the bees in the box will stick their faces in honey, kick the old queen, out the front door and go find a new home. So that's how honeybees reproduce as a super colony. Does that make
So
sense?
got it. So is each box that you have its own colony?
Yes, and they each have their own queen and they know the difference. And what's
Oh,
interesting is people are very afraid when they see a swarm land, but they are actually the gentlest bees in the world. They are homeless. Basically, they're looking for a new home. They have no they have no home to defend. They have no babies to protect. They're just simply looking for a new place to live. And so you can actually stick your hand right in a swarm of bees. And when you see those crazy pictures on the internet, that's usually a swarm. Those aren't regular
Okay.
bees.
Okay. Uh, so do you then provide a home for them to go to? I mean, do you
Yes,
how do you
yes.
get
If
another box going?
Well, I have some fun experiences this spring of people calling me and saying, "Help, we have a swarm." And so if I'm nearby, I'll go and try and do a rescue. Hopefully they're low enough that we can reach them. I have a large Rubbermaid tub, so I put down a bed sheet and a Rubbermaid tub, and then I will reach up and shake that branch really hard and pluck the queen. And if I have the queen, then all of the other bees that are in the air and around will want to go to her. And so once I have them in the Rubbermaid tub, I take them home and transfer them into a hive and give them their own box.
Huh, okay. And if you're not able to find somebody that's in need of rescue, how do you, how do you start a new box?
Well, you can order them. We're trying a new thing. I'm part of Muskegon area beekeepers, and traditionally people order bees in the spring from Georgia because their apiaries run all year round. So you get a box, a package of about 3 pounds of honeybees and a queen, and you try and start them in a new hive. But in West Michigan, especially, we're trying very hard to be sustainable. So I have a few more beehives than I need. Right now, I have 11 at my house, and I'm hoping to be able to create enough bees that next spring, when somebody wants to start beekeeping, they could buy a box of bees from me, some what we call Michigan mutts, local bees, and not have to get those southern bees from Georgia with a drawl.
Are there an actual difference between Michigan bees and Georgia bees?
Well, it has to do with who the queen mates with. When a virgin queen hatches from one of those queen cells, she goes about 300 feet up in the air to something called the drone congregation area, and she mates with 15 to 20 different drones on her maiden voyage. And then she comes back to the box, and she usually stays there her whole life. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get bees that are acclimated to Michigan and overwintering here in Michigan. So it's a genetic thing. So we're pretty proud of our Michigan mutts, and we think that Georgia bees are kind of wimps.
Well, let's go Michigan bees. Uh, so you mentioned you have too many hives at the moment. If somebody wants to get involved in beekeeping here in Muskegon, how would they go about that?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. When I wanted to be a beekeeper, he's a beekeeper, and I said, "Scott, I'm going to have bees." And he said, "No, I'm sorry, honey, you can't have bees." And I said, "But yes, I can. I already checked with North Muskegon. There's no ordinance preventing it." And he said, "No, there's too much to learn. I want you to be a beekeeper and not a bee haver. And there's a difference." So he sent me a book, and then he invited me to join my local beekeeping club, find a mentor, watch some videos, go to bee school. The Holland Area Beekeepers Club offers a bee school every February for beginners, and it was a great experience. And then I actually went to somebody's apiary in August when there were about 60,000 bees in the hive, stood there in my bee suit to find out if I would freak out. So it takes months of preparation. You can't just decide one day, "Oh, I want to have bees." You could technically get them, but you would probably lose them.
Huh, okay. Um, wow. I had no idea. I mean, it sounds like there's a whole bee culture here in West Michigan. I had no idea. So I guess a final wrap up. What do you want people in Rotary and people in West Michigan to know about beekeeping?
Well, first of all, I'd like them to know that they don't need to be afraid of bees. Before I even got my first bees, a friend found out that I had learned a lot about bees in the last year, and I spent an entire week visiting at Martin Luther King Elementary in the Heights, presenting to each individual class during their garden club time through the Coalition for Community Development. And kids were afraid of bees. Oh no, we need to kill them, we need to spray them, we need to run. And I tell kids, when you see a bee on a flower, the bee is just going to Myers, just like us. The bee is going to Myers. She wants to do her grocery shopping. She wants to take them home, put them in the cupboard. You don't need to worry about a bee that's just out going to Myers. When I'm a beekeeper and you saw me take the lid off, I have to wear protective
Yep.
equipment, and I'm taking their house apart room by room. They're going to be a little unhappy about that. But when you just see a bee out on a flower, they're just going to Myers.
Okay. Well, I've got to say, I've never learned so much about bees in my life. This has been a lot of fun. Kim, I want to say thank you, and we appreciate you sharing your hobby with us. And I'll now know not to spray the little bees when I see them out in the backyard.
Thank you.
Kim Wood, thank you very much. And we return it now back to Linda.